Finally, a Badger Ordinance Condition 1 mount is on my table. This one is 1.93 inches high. It is one of 3 different sizes that they offer on height, as well as a varying assortment of different colors, main tube sizes, and even offsets, even though it's typically 0 or plus whatever this is, probably about 1.5 inches. You can also get them in 0 like this one, or 20 MOA canned. The nicest thing I have to say about the Badger mount is so far is the gigantic amount of accessories that Badger Ordnance sells for this thing. You can literally do whatever you want with one of these mounts. You can have levels on this side, red dots on that side, diving boards up on top with lasers. You could do anything you want with this mount. And it's all thanks to a couple of small pockets and a couple of through holes. Well, you must be asking, for that much flexibility, this mount must cost a lot of money. And you'd be right. These come in at around $320, depending on a couple of variations. But more or less, this is what you get for your $320. All the accessories are available directly through their website, and some of them can be quite expensive. However, that flexibility has to come at a price somewhere, unfortunately. I'm sure there are aftermarket companies that will make stuff that fits this, but I'm not 100% sure on that. As far as the mount itself, it is very nicely finished. This has been loved previously by the current owner. It's been on a couple of their rifles. I know it's had a couple of different scopes in it, but I'll showcase the scope that will be going in this soon. And as a result, you could see there are some love marks here and there, specifically on the bottom, where you can see that this thing locks up so tight and so evenly on the pick rail that you actually have some of the black anodizing rubbing off from whatever receiver this was on. While we're down here, we have 2 very large full-width locking lugs for your pick rail, which is awesome to see. And then you have these 2 half-inch hex nuts, which are captive through bolts for our little bitty tiny claws. These are about a 1/2 inch wide. But look at the cross bolt inside there. They are huge. Look at the threads on that thing. That's like probably close to M8. That's friggin' awesome. Very strong, very robust. Whether you're a fan of hex nuts or not, I personally am not, because I like my mounts to be as streamlined as possible. They do serve a purpose. They're very easy to know if they're tight or not, because you can go over there and wiggle it, and if it loosens up, you know it's loose. But you could also tighten this thing up with a wrench, a pair of pliers, needle nose, hell, even a coin across the face if you so desire. So it's not like you have to carry around a specialty tool just for your mount. I still would recommend it no matter what, because you might need a T15 to make sure your caps are secure. But regardless of that, hate them or love them, the 1/2 inch hex nut is still a very usable and viable option for a mounting solution. Anyway, I'm going to continue with the bottom, which there isn't really a whole lot else to say. These cross bolts are pressed in there. I'm sure you could press them out. I'm not even going to make the vainest attempt to accidentally destroy them, but they are wonderful. This is a very simple and elegant solution. We only have about 2.5 to 3 inches of overall pick rail engagement, but you can see it's even from the cross bolts and even into the middle section over here where the blocks are. I'm going to get ahead of myself, but let's see how much play the mount has on a pick rail. Honestly, not that much. If this was any tighter, if you had a little bit of dirt and debris in there, or perhaps maybe a not full mil-spec pick rail, you might have to worry about this thing locking up on you. This is more than acceptable. I would say it's probably about as good as you're going to find on most mounts. While we have it on my mounting block, let's mount up this mount finger tight. Again, it's one of the reasons why hex nuts are really nice. And check out the profile of it mounted up. I really like the coloration of FDE that they chose for this. It looks very nice without being too flashy. I hate it when mounts are almost polished and they just don't seem right. At least for me. Your mileage may vary. The rest of the mount has some nice machining to it. I don't really see any tool marks. Everything looks like it was bead blasted before it was anodized, which makes sense. And it's got a very nice, even looking coat to it. I also like that Badger put the torque specs for everything where the scope goes underneath it. So this way, When the scope's inside, you really won't notice it unless you're looking for it. It's a nice way of keeping the rest of the mount looking nice and clean. The only other thing that you will notice is on the caps, there is a C1 for the Condition 1 mount, and on the side, a very subtle Badger Ordinance logo right there inside that rail. Very elegant. Inspecting the cap on this mount, it's very small and very lightweight. That's another thing I forgot to mention. I forgot to mention the weight. We'll get to that in just a moment. There are no wear marks inside the cap itself, which is very nice. And these are very large screws, as far as thread goes, for typically what you see in a mount. They are a T15 Torx head, but the threads themselves are probably closer to 4 or 5 millimeter. They also don't protrude out the bottom all that much. They also have a little bit of blue Loctite on them. So from the factory, this is basically a set and forget mounting solution. Another thing that I'm a huge fan of is this crossbar down here being completely flat and as wide as possible. That is because I like to put a slide vernier in between where the mount is and the bottom of the scope and leveling it that way. I find that in my years of doing this, it's a very fast and efficient way of getting you really, really close to your seat inside the ballpark. I've been off probably a maximum of 2 degrees, and that was only because either they had a giant nitrogen purge valve on the bottom or a very large windage turret or parallax knob that got in the way. This is great. It's as wide as possible and it's nice and flat. Looking inside the mount, you will see that they have 2 relief cuts on either side, which is very nice to see. Why do you need that, or why is that important to have? This will actually spring closed, and you'll have a pinch mark at the very top when you go to put your scope inside. So you might actually have to force the scope past that, and it could damage the outside of the tube. These are wonderful. You could just feel it under the nail. So it's probably about 3 to 4 thousandths. So just enough clearance to make sure it's going to not cause a problem, but not so much so that it looks or weakens it in any way, shape, or form. Putting it up on my scale with, of course, the caps and all the screws, before I forget to do this for the 6th time, and just over 7 ounces. Again, my scale is not calibrated. I think on the website they say this is somewhere like around 6.8 ounces, so not too far off. Well, see, what scope is going inside a mount that justifies the $320 that the person spent on this? Well, if you work in factors of 10, it works out because the March FX Shorty 1 to 10 in dual focal plane with these shuriken turrets, I think I'm pronouncing that right, I am also slightly stupid, is as near as makes a difference 10 times the price of the mount. So it makes sense to have an expensive mount if you have an expensive optic. And hey, look, even if you don't have an expensive optic, expensive mounts come with really nice options. Maybe you're looking to have an RMR on this side, a level on that side, and a diving board on top. You can kit this Badger out any way you like. As far as how the scope goes inside this mount, beautifully. You can easily turn it, meaning that there's no pinch spots. I'm going to give a little bit of rubbing. I know this hurts my soul. Please don't do this at home. Let's look on the bottom and the sides. You could see some light witness marks from when this was previously mounted because it came to me mounted, but there are no scratches on the anodizing of a $3,000 scope. Thankfully, we're doing great. As far as the anodizing or rub marks on the mount itself, flawless. Flawless. What that means is when you put the scope in here and you get it sort of leveled and you start torquing down the caps, you don't have to worry about if you need to adjust it, you're going to mar up either of the finishes. It is excellent. Anyway, I'm going to get this scope mounted up and then we're going to see how well this mount returns to 0. Down here, looking through the March Shorty 1 to 10 inside the Badger mount. The mount is torqued down to my rail at 60 inch-pounds. As you can see, everything lines up very well. And let's loosen this thing up and see what it does. I'm going to loosen the front first, followed by the rear. Wiggle the mount. There's very little play between the mount and the pick rail. It's excellent. I'm then going to snug up the front, then the rear, then I'm going to torque the front, then torque the rear. You'll You'll see this before I do, but that looks to be pretty damn good. I'm now going to repeat this process again, and we'll take another look. Harmonics settle down, maybe a half of a tenth shift to the right, but everything looks pretty solid. One more time. And there you have it, folks. This thing resets to 0 extremely well, and there's nothing really to complain about it down here. And this is what it looks like with the March Shorty mount up inside. It is a beautiful looking package. As you very clearly have seen throughout this video, this is a very high quality made mount. I think the best part about it are all the accessories you can get for it. These few holes over here really do transform this from something that's good to something that's potentially great. You could basically outfit this however you want. You don't need to go to a third-party source. You go directly through Badger. I'm impressed by the overall machining. I'm impressed by the coatings that they have on this. The overall fit and finish is excellent. And the way this thing returns to 0, there's absolutely nothing that I can pinpoint with this that I'm not completely satisfied with. Yes, the price is a little expensive, $320-ish there or thereabouts. But if you want to buy something that's quality, that's probably what you're going to have to pay for a mount like this. With all that being said, a very huge thank you to the individual that sent both the mount and the optic in for review. Needless to say, it was an absolute pleasure and true joy getting the chance to review both of these. Anyway, with all that being said, thank you all very much for watching. And as always, I'll see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe Star subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you could still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.